1 trillion raised to the 10th power is 1,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,0
they need to bring the police out because, they will destroy something. You have another choice. It's called a fucking democracy, right?
If he's really going to take a stand on LGBT rights, then he needs to get involved in Poland and be like, sorry, the church is wrong here. I should know. I'm in charge of it.
You should just take everything as it's given to you and not question anything. And this is making you a proper Christian that will get rewarded. And by the way, we have some political opinions as well, so listen to that. Forcing you to make some kind of decisions because of their moral code that you find wrong, you start getting rebellious about this. And then the music video of Thunderstruck started playing in the national TV, and it played for as long as I guess they took the guy out in cuffs or something like that.
Oh, so this was someone hacked the feed and was actually superimposing images. Wow.
No, not hacking the feed. It was an inside job.
Oh, amazing.
So yeah, Chris, congratulations for becoming a father soon. So
thank you very much, Gabriel.
So I guess that's a great moment to start talking about abortion.
Oh my God. And religion as well. Wow. Jesus, we've got it all here today. So, Gabriel, welcome very much to Beyond Binary Thinking. This is a podcast where we try and inform ourselves about what's going on in the world and remaining open to differing opinions. And I have a simple question for you. What the fuck is going on in Poland right now?
Depending on when would we do the podcast, when would we start? If we would start, for example, yesterday, I would have a different answer to this question. Because first I wanted to say that we have protests going on in Poland. But now it's closer to actually starting a civil war.
Congratulations. Your protest is growing into an awkward teenager. That's lovely.
Yeah, exactly. Perhaps we should start from the beginning, okay? Because there's a lot of subjects that I would want to approach. I don't want to get too political. I would like to speak about what does it actually mean to Polish citizens like me, because, I'm not a political expert. But let's talk about politics now that has been said. So basically, you have this political party in Poland currently. It's called PiS. And PiS is an abbreviation for Prawo i Sprawiedliwość, which in turn means law and order or law and justice. So yeah, exactly, man, exactly. So talking about being obvious, right? While you're at it, why don't you name your political party a fucking galactic empire, right?
I can hear the Imperial Stormtrooper music every time.
Yeah, exactly. Law and order, great name for a political... we do have a political party named Confederation, so, I guess we are not that good at naming our political parties. But law and order, yeah, it kind of sounds like... You like freedom? Hey, how about law and order? Our law and order that we make as a political party. Yeah, but never mind that. So have you heard anything about the Polish government?
So I've been to Poland a few times. That's how we met. I've seen protests most times I've been there. I think there's a good starting point is like where my layman's perspective of Poland is, and then you can correct me where I've got everything wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So there seems to have been one party that's had most of the power for most of the time. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. That's basically how it works.
Lots of protests because, there's problems in Poland. There's homophobia. There's a movement to make abortion illegal. And then...
quite the opposite. It's the movement to make it legal.
Oh my God. You guys are still in those dark ages. Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
We are. Kind of. We just got here.
Okay, well, and then the other thing I've heard is sort of, and this is from the perspective of my co-founder who definitely leans right, his take is that Polish politics has sort of switched. So in England, I'd say older people lean more conservative and the younger generation lean left. And they go, old people, you don't understand our cool lefty politics. And he always said, Poland's the opposite, whereas older people are left and younger people are rebelling and becoming right wing. But that is his perspective. I'd like you to tell me where that's all wrong.
Well, that's not all wrong, but it's it's really hard to define. It's really hard to go into this mindset of talking about left and right, when all of the political parties in Poland are completely fucked up and only hungry for power, right? Because it's hard, then what? I go out and say I am, for example, a left winger or a right winger. They will try to identify me with one of the parties, but
yeah, and left and right doesn't really mean anything. I've been talking to Americans for the past couple of weeks, and what they would describe as communists.
The Realpolitik podcasts, right?
Yeah, they're amazing, right? What they would describe as communists, we would describe as wanting healthcare. So, yeah. Left and right don't mean anything, so just kind of give us an idea as you see it. Yeah.
So basically, let's say that there are around 4 important political parties in Poland, right? So you have the one that I mentioned, Law and Order or Law and Justice. Let's call them peace. But the fact is, you could say that they are completely conservative, right? Because it's religion, it's the history of Poland and so on, close borders, stuff like that. Let's talk about how they actually got to power. They got to power by taking money from the people that are actually working hard and giving it to all of those poor people in the parts of Poland where there is no real, there is lacks of education. A lot of old people living in closed neighborhoods, with church being the only source of information, right?
Rural populism and the fact that the city politicians probably normally ignore those groups, right?
Yeah, so now how does this sound? Does this sound right-wing or does this sound communist?
It sounds remarkably similar to Thailand, actually, is the comparison I'd make, and the rise of Thaksin Shinawatra, the populist who did the same play exactly, right? So same with Trump's play as well, right? Like the Rust Belt, middle states, mostly ignored, and you can rise a very populist agenda by not talking about, what's good for the economy, but what's good for the people. Whether that's left or right depends on which side you fall on.
Yes, so you have all those people that don't actually care about all of those important political matters, and you can play on their emotions, especially using church, which actually is, I wouldn't even call Polish church a church on its own, because it's more like, at this point, it's more like a clerical mafia that is in bed with our politics, right? And they have a lot of power, because think about it, they are in bed with our politics, so they actually are recommending people to actually vote for the political parties while giving a mass, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's easy to play on emotions and right.
And just a bit of an insight there: is religion an old man's game, or is it are young people still into it?
Oh, that's very that's a good point, because actually Poland is a country with the fastest growing secularization, right, among young people. Exactly, because they're kind of like waking up. It's really hard to be an actually hardened Catholic in the times where you have like the flow of information, right? Because if you think about it, what is the Catholic religion? What is its base premise? The base premise is that you're a better Catholic if you believe without any evidence, if you believe what we tell you, like straight away. That's the quote from the Bible, that the blessed are the ones that didn't see but they believed, right? So this is what is being pounded into heads of those young children in school, that they should just follow without thinking about it, and that makes them good Catholics, right? So connect all of this.
Sounds like that response is getting diminishing returns, right? And I can imagine, especially the 3 popes ago was a Polish guy, so I can imagine everyone's grandparents love the Pope, but it's sort of a distant memory to the newer generations.
Yeah, we didn't have rock stars. We had the Pope, right, in their times. So it's but there is some respect towards the Pope, the Polish history of religion. That's one thing, because the religion really played a big role in Polish history, right? The churches and all that. So that's why they still have this kind of strong standing, especially among those older people. But young people, see, the thing is, they simply don't care, because it's not in their best interest to really rebel against religion, because they don't really get anything out of this, right? Because probably your teachers, your family will be religious, right? And you are this young guy that actually had internet, actually had access to information, and he, it's really hard to just you are not the kind of person that just accepts facts that they tell you, like the church does, right? So it's not really in your best interest to go against the religion.
And also, what I find often happens in these cases, it's not like people start rebelling against religion. It's that religion starts getting more and more political and interfering in people's lives, and that's when people push back and go, I'm not sure we need you at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what's happening right now, because as I mentioned at the beginning, the Catholic religion is really putting this idea into your mind that you're a better Catholic, a better person if you believe without asking questions. So, connect that with the church having a lot of political power, and you get an explosive experiment, and that can backfire, which is happening right now. So let's get to the bottom of the problem. How did it all start? Okay, actually, let me spoil the ending first before we start the story. So the ending is that currently our, let's call him the head of our country, which is not the president, mind you, because our president is just like a puppet. By the way, a very nice puppet. I had a chance to meet him in person. I have pictures to show for that. A very nice guy, actually. I mean, he's just cute, you just want to hug him when he starts speaking, but that doesn't change anything. He's just a puppet. He doesn't actually have anything to say. He never says anything, really. But we have the head of peace that I mentioned, vice prime minister, right, of Poland currently. But he has all the power. Everyone is listening to him. He's the one speaking on behalf of all of the Polish politics and so on. So what he is doing right now is he's making his, the final stretch, the full dictatorship rule over Poland. And he actually did it in a very, very smart way, which I won't say I admire, but you will admit that the plan was kind of crazy, but it actually may work soon. So it all started by the Constitutional Tribunal voting the abortion illegal in Poland. Currently, the law that they voted forbids abortion even in cases where the fetus was damaged inside the womb. So you can have a child that has a brain out of its skull in your womb, but you cannot abort that baby, even if you know already that it will be born dead. They still force you to.
What about in the cases where it will put the mother's life at risk?
You must understand that it's not so easy to prove that your life will be actually in danger in most cases.
Right, and the sort of difficult decision that should be between a woman and her doctor rather than a bunch of politicians and a bunch of church members, right?
Yeah, and you're already in a very stout situation making those decisions, and you will need to actually fight to confirm that your life will be in danger if you carry out this
through the admin and paperwork. Look, I mean, being a little bit sympathetic towards the religious perspective here, if you do think that there is a life we're talking about in the womb, I can understand their perspective. The problem is that if you're interested in doing the right thing here, even from that perspective, the only thing making abortion illegal does is sort of just export the problem, right? So in Ireland, they had this for years. Northern Ireland was the weirdest, where it was technically part of the UK, but it was still under that strict religious law. So the euphemism used to just become like flying to Liverpool, because that's what people would do, and then just have the procedure there. So, and the thing is, like, when you make these weird rules, you don't fix the problem, you just make it move somewhere else. And people end up having abortions in an unsafe manner somewhere else.
Yes, but the thing is, exactly. And let's decompose this problem here for a second, because what you're talking about, it was already happening for the past years. It's not like it's something new, because it was, even if it was kind of legal, although there was a lot of discussions about that before, and they were always controversial because our political party in power does not, they are religious, so they did not approve of that. But the thing is, it was never easy to make an abortion in Poland, and people were always going abroad to do that. So last year, let's talk about some numbers, even if I don't really want to talk about human lives as a statistic, right? But, that's what we do in politics anyway. So there were, I think, 1,100 abortions in Poland, legal abortions in Poland last year, right?
100,000, do you say?
1,100.
1,100, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and 1,076, if I remember correctly, out of those were because of the fact that the fetus was damaged in the womb, right? Now, that's not such a high number, right? Because there is an estimate, and this is not a perfect number because you it's really hard to estimate, but it is estimated that there were 100,000 abortions made by Polish women abroad, right?
Right.
So you see, the main idea behind those protests is the fact that if the situation were to occur, most likely she will go abroad and she will do an abortion there. Of course, it's not an option for everyone because sometimes you cannot afford it. Sometimes there are other things at play here. But the thing is just the matter itself that imagine the situation, and let's talk about the worst case scenario, because why not? Imagine a 13-year-old kid, a woman, she was raped. The fetus is already damaged in the womb. You know that it will be dead. It may put the life in danger, and still you will not be able to make an abortion in this situation, right? And it's not about the fact that you cannot do it because you can go abroad. It's just the fact that you now know that you live in a country where the government, because of some kind of religious ideology, will force you. Then where is the freedom in all that?
Yeah, and I just want to call out, we are two guys talking about women's rights here. But I think that's part of the problem, right? Like how many senior politicians are women in the parties you've just talked about? How many members of the church are female?
Yes.
There seems to be a dearth of female influence. As I can imagine, they're 50% of the population. And I don't think most of these laws are coming from hearing out the female perspective.
The thing is, yeah, you're completely right. That's why I don't really want to focus on that subject. But then again, this is the matter of discussion that people are making, that people are treating women as just some kind of a woman's right, as to a medical procedure, as some kind of point of political discussion, where it shouldn't be. It's just a basic human right. And then again, if we are talking about a situation where it is a complete freedom to make an abortion just because you want to, well, personally, I completely agree with that. You should be able to. I do think that it can be a matter for discussion. But then again, if we are talking about actually damaged fetuses that will die at the moment of birth, then this is just crazy, right? Let's not disassemble it. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and simply put, it's a tough decision between a woman and her doctor. I think that's all that needs to be said on the matter.
That's the thing. You already have the secularization of young people in Poland moving very, very fast. But then again, you just don't want to stick your head out, right? You can live peacefully without even thinking about religion. But the moment where something like this is happening, so you already...
Well, this is the problem when you're talking about living in a multicultural, secular state. Like, my answer is very simple. If you don't believe in abortion, don't have one. If you don't believe in gay marriage, don't get gay married. The problem is these people want the right to control other people's lives. They want the right to impinge on someone else's freedom. And that's where it gets fucked up, right?
You know, it is, I understand it completely, right? Because if you don't agree with something and you're kind of agreeing that it's a freedom for everyone to decide for themselves, this can be kind of a problematic issue. And that is the issue of living in a society. We need to have compromises, right?
Okay, so take us away from the story.
So let's actually continue with the story.
People start protesting.
What happened.
Right?
So first, so the protests started, and they started getting more and more heated. And at some point, people started actually attacking churches. Now, it is important to state one important fact. Those are peaceful protests, because it is easy to get lost in the fact that there are talks of, you have those transparents and they are actually writing there that this is war and so on. But hey, for now, there was no looting. There were no fires yet. There was no...
Right. But as is often the case, you have protesters and you'll have some more aggressive elements, right?
Yeah, but for now, there wasn't really that kind of an extreme happening.
Right.
What is happening, though, is that people are actually doing stuff to churches and to these to religious statues of, for example, the Pope. They are not really destroying them, but they are spray painting over them. They are
vandalizing,
vandalizing them, but still not something, not anything permanent. They are not actually destroying this, right? So that's the thing. This is a taboo subject in Poland, right? Because
and if that's literally your religion, then it's a very offensive act, right?
Yeah, and you actually mentioned protests at the beginning, that there are a lot of protests in Poland, for example, for the homophobia and so on. So yeah, actually, this is something I grew up being used to. That Polish people are really fast to go protesting, right? So this is something I am completely used to. You up the taxes for example, farmers, miners, and 2 days later you have them on the streets of Warsaw protesting, right? But then again, never in my life I have seen something like that, that people are actually organizing against the church, that they are doing something to the church. And this is a taboo subject. So a lot of people, even those people that were actually supporting the movement, the pro-choice movement, right, they are actually saying that stuff like, this is too much, this has gone too far, please don't touch the churches, because this is the religious rights of people to have their own faith. But the thing is, if you have church going into politics, then you cannot say that then later, if people get mad at church for doing the exact thing and want to involve church in the protests, well, you cannot be surprised, right? Because it was them that started going into politics, while they actually shouldn't, if they wanted faith and church to be completely separate from the political issues of the country. But that's the thing. This is something that really gets me emotional, and this is something that I really wanted to talk about, because it's touching. It's really touching for someone like me to see a clergyman screaming at those young people that are standing in front of the church and saying that God will punish them and so on, but they don't listen, because they don't fear him anymore, and he doesn't feel the power that that the clergymen usually have in Poland. So that's something that is really uplifting here. Now, okay, so you've had Black Lives Matters protests in America, right? And if you think about it, when they were protesting, and it is really hard to really stop protests like Black Lives Matter, because there is no real politician that would say, guys, you're completely wrong. Actually, I think that racism is okay and Black lives don't matter. You don't have this happening in America, right? No one would actually say that. But it's really hard to actually agree onto something, because tell me, Chris, what do you think? What can a politician actually do in this situation? How can they agree, and what they can actually change in the situation? It's really hard to agree
in Black Lives Matter. Well, okay, they do tend to say things like all lives matter. You have Donald Trump retweeting people shouting white power. And there's a general argument that the police are militarized, and a lot of what they do isn't helping communities but hurting them.
Yeah,
stuff
exactly.
like no-knock warrants, the murder of Breonna Taylor, the fact that police can't be arrested even when they've obviously killed someone by kneeling on their neck for 9 minutes. There's a bunch of things that could be done, but instead at the moment you have a presidential candidate who is trying to run on a platform of law and order, even though he's clearly losing that.
Yes, exactly, and that's what I mean. It is really hard to find one solution, because the problem there is a systematic racism that has been developing for like 100 years, and you have the bad policing system, which is not that easy to actually reform. Right? There are some laws that you can change, but there will always be some kind of discussion. But in this situation, you have protests of literally tens of thousands of young people. And and the government is actually bringing the police and the military to the streets, and they are pacifying those protesters. And there are some voices saying that, yeah, okay, but what can they do? That's the only choice they have. There are protests. They need to bring the police out, because they will destroy something. You have another choice. It's called a fucking democracy, right?
Yeah, and as you say, these protesters are asking for a specific repeal this law, right?
In this case, you start wondering, what do they have to gain by actually not listening to those people and making the stuff actually worse? So here's what actually happened. The head of our country, the Jarosław Kaczyński, went on live TV, and now you have those protesters, and on their transparents they are writing, "This is war" and stuff like that, but still those were peaceful protests. But now imagine what happens when the actual politician gets on live TV and he says, "This is war" to those people on the streets. You imagine what would happen in America, for example, if Trump would go on television and he would say, okay, now we have war against Black people, against Black Lives Matters movement, an actual civil war. Because what Kaczynski said on TV, he basically said that everyone that supports his political party, everyone that feels wronged by the fact that there was some spray paint, there were some passwords spray painted over the church walls. He said that everyone that feels offended by that, everyone that is supporting his party, they should go out to the streets and they should fight them. They should actually fight and defend the churches.
Right. So the candidate for law and order is encouraging civil war.
Yeah. And now it is that's first of all. And second of all, he made his point again that all of those, not only is this going against the power, so that is wrong, and they have full right to pacify those protests. He confirmed that. He also said that he also emphasized the fact that we currently are in the state of epidemic law, that we are all in the red zone of danger from the COVID-19, right? So basically all of those protests are completely illegal because you cannot have a gathering of more than 5 people on the streets right now, right? So he emphasized on that. But then again, he said that those gatherings are illegal, but then he said to all of his supporters that they should gather and fight them, right? So now there is the message behind it, and then there were some more public appearances of Kaczynski talking about this, but those are super emotional. He's just basically screaming that they are traitors and so on. Most people are assuming, well, it may be just a theory, right? But it is pretty clear what Kaczynski is trying to do here. He actually wants people to fight. He wants 1 or 2 bodies to actually fall, and then he wants to, apply martial law and have the complete power by himself.
Right, emergency powers, as you see happening in a few places. I've even heard people on the left criticize Donald Trump for not taking emergency powers and not doing more. So, interesting.
Yeah, but the thing is, they are not actually doing anything. They just they want to pass the martial law right now because Kaczynski will then be able to become the head of power, basically, the head of state, right? He will basically have absolute power. And the fact is that since they started, they have made a lot of changes to law. They have changed they have reformed the court in Poland. So basically now, if something like that would to happen, most likely we would never recover from that. Most likely, I mean, that's just my guess, but I think that if something that would happen, then we would be doomed for peace to lead the country eternally, probably.
And it's a pattern you're seeing the world over, right? Turkey, Hungary, you have strongman politics, constitutional crisis, and a leader emerges where it's unlikely that democracy will be restored in the near future.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, because the church is completely supporting the pro-life organizations in Poland, and he's there, of course, on this. But have you actually heard what the Bible is saying about abortions?
I don't believe it says anything about it whatsoever.
It does actually say something.
Oh, yeah?
In the book of Numbers, that is Old Testament. But then again, I don't like the argument that something is in the Old Testament, so you shouldn't actually take it seriously because, the religion is based on the Old Testament. That was the first thing that actually formed the religion, so we cannot just disqualify that.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, there's plenty of things in the Old Testament that Christians choose to ignore when it's convenient. So the Old Testament says not to wear clothes of blended fibers, and it's the Old Testament gives advice on how to treat your slaves, and the Old Testament gives advice that you shouldn't eat shellfish. So people do pick and choose from the Old Testament.
And I have a big problem with that, actually. But talking about the Old Testament, the book of Numbers, so first of all, you mentioned slaves. There is actually a rule there written that if someone kills your slave, you have full right to kill his slave to make things right. And then everything is cool when you do that.
That is why I avoid killing people's slaves.
Exactly, right.
Solid advice passed down from generations.
But there is actually a quote in the book of Numbers about abortion. It is actually an instruction on how to actually make an abortion on a woman that was not faithful to her husband, and it's actually describing how to make it maximally painful for her because she wasn't faithful to her husband, right?
Okay, yeah, that's a fucked up book.
Yeah.
Have you heard the story? Winston Churchill's son was trapped in a manor house with a bunch of politicians during the Blitz, when the Germans were bombing Britain. And he was a very bright and annoying, spoiled young child. And so in order to send him away, they said, like, just go read the Bible. And so he was just flicking through the Old Testament and just laughing to himself like, oh, God was a little shit.
Yeah, but then, and this is actually not a fact, and of course, and this is not even me covering a fact subjectively. This is nothing but like my tinfoil hat theory about the church and the abortion, right? Because, okay, first of all, because there is an argument in Poland that, the church is pro-life, they want those children to be born, but then again, they are funding some of the child hospitals in Poland. They are funding some of the
orphanages
orphanages. Exactly, that's the word I was looking for. Orphanages. So they're funding the orphanages and so on. But the thing is, when you get so much tax-free money, you better be fucking funding some child hospitals, right? I mean, and have you seen the state of those orphanages, of those church orphanages? They are fucking terrible. You don't want to end up in that system. So, yeah, and by the way, the church on my street, it has golden doors. So how about you sell those fucking doors and actually fund those orphanages if you want to put yourself in the place where you're such a savior for those young children, right? But then again, this is just my tinfoil hat theory. But think about it this way. If you make an abortion on a children, so, the church is actually saying that this is life, but then again, you cannot have a burial for a child like that. But then again, the church can't make money of them, right? Imagine a newborn who's gonna die anyway, quick christening, few hundred only, funeral service almost straight after, another few hundred only, and add all of those poor, suffering families together, you may end up with quite a substantial amount of cash. And all of this cash is tax fucking free, right? I mean, again, this is just a tinfoil hat theory.
It might be a slightly MBA perspective.
It is fully. I just really wanted to say it. I just really wanted to say it out loud.
But there is a perspective that the major religions have been in an arms race to breed as large a population as possible for a long time, right? And it is easier to make babies than convert them. We're not finding any more continents these days.
Yeah, because all the kids which somehow survive will end up in Catholic institutions, right? And so that's another score for those bunch of.
While I've got you on conspiracy theories, I've had one which is that part of the objective here is because of COVID. There's something written in the Polish constitution that says there's only so much debt the government can run up. They're about to cross that threshold. And so this is part of a push to make a constitutional crisis and, as you said, seize more power.
Well, that is highly possible because a lot of people are saying that because, there has been theories that, for example, they are using this as a cover-up to pass that you will be obligated to get vaccines, right, for the COVID. But like this is a completely tinfoil hat theory.
And I find what happens in these situations is whatever happens in the news, they're like, what this really is about is my pet theory, which I always talk about.
yeah, but then again, I completely understand those people because this is the standard practice, the standard rules of engagement of law and order political party here, because they do this all the time. They make some controversies, for example, around the LGBT community, right? Because that is always a hot subject. You just need one speech of Kaczynski saying that LGBT are not people; they are some kind of ideology, and they controlled by the devil or by the Eastern civilization or something like that, right? Western civilization, I'm sorry. But and that is all you need to actually, wind up some protests on the streets, and boom, you can pass some kind of law under the table. That is, for example, giving you more power or raising.
So let's lead into the realm of optimism here, because I think this is always necessary in despair in conversations such as these. A thing that's often said in the intergenerational culture wars is that the young generation are weak. They don't know hard work, and they will lose as soon as their lattes and avocado toast run.
And it may be actually true. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people just kind of get tired of fighting like that, right?
It's
and you might start thinking,
when you have a generation of people who, through economic reasons, are forced to live with their parents, it's very hard to go out and protest, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
especially with a pandemic on.
Yeah, and especially if your parents would be Catholics, right? And they are actually they were actually indoctrinated, because you cannot blame our grandparents for being indoctrinated with religion in Poland, right? Because I'm not against anyone that is actually religious, that is actually Catholic, but the thing that is happening in Poland with religion, it's not really about having faith. If it's about actually controlling the people to gain more and more power. And actually, you said it because that's an interesting subject, because you mentioned that they are choosing what to believe and what to actually ignore from the Old Testament. This is something that I really, really am disgusted by in the Christianity, because for example, whenever I see that the Pope is saying something, I don't want to quote or anything, because I forgot what it was actually about, but I really hate it when I see that the Pope has said something uplifting for the LGBT community or something like that. While I'm strongly supporting the LGBT community and their strive for equal rights, I just hate it when the church is actually changing their opinions, because I every time that there is some kind of, I see that as an opportunity for people to finally open their eyes and see, hey guys, did you notice that this is kind of outdated for our current times? So instead of actually opening your eyes and seeing at that moment that maybe we should give it a bit of a thought, maybe we have been following something that really isn't that educated, that is something that was just created by people a long time ago before they actually had any insight, right?
The danger of a kind Pope who's a good spokesman is that he's not actually promoting all of these countries to change their politics. He's just excusing them, right? And I'll give a kind of more Christian perspective. I could see the new Pope doing great things, but it takes more than just saying the nice soundbite to the Western press. Mm-hmm. Like because this is the mental thing, like you can't have an organization based around the belief that the Pope is God's representative on earth, and then when he comes out and says, like homophobia is wrong and the church's role in homophobia has been wrong, choose to ignore that.
Exactly.
For political means. And likewise, the Pope, it's not enough to say nice things. If he's really going to take a stand on LGBT rights, then he needs to get involved in Poland and be like, sorry, the church is wrong here. I should know. I'm in charge of it.
Yeah, exactly. And first of all, this is wrong. And my point was that whenever a church is against LGBT community, I see this as an opportunity for all of those young people that are, progressive, to actually open their eyes and be like, okay, so now I see that this is probably not really honestly people-loving organizations, because they are actually saying that all of those people that simply like someone of the same gender are bad people, right?
Yeah,
so
and
I see this as an opportunity, and this is a wasted opportunity when someone goes out and says something positive.
I'm more religious than you probably realize, because it's not something I talk about. But to put it simply, if the church wants any role of moral leadership in the world, then it needs to be ahead of the curve. And time again, it acts exactly how you'd guess it would act, like a bunch of old men who are out of touch with the world and are actually behind the curve morally, right? And so to make your point, And I think they've proven themselves unable to lead morally. And even as someone that has faith and religion, I agree they should be discarded, because Jesus did not submit to authority when it was wrong, when it was tyrannical, and when it didn't have any moral leadership to give.
Yeah, but the thing is, I'm not so anti-theistic as I may have sounded like, because it's one thing when you want to be a theist. No, I'm not saying atheist, a theist, right?
Yeah.
So it's one thing when you want to be that. It's one thing if you want to believe in some kind of higher power. It's one thing if you want to seek some kind of wisdom from the Bible. It's another thing to actually listening to those statements saying that, you should just take everything as it's given to you and not question anything. And this is making you a proper Christian that will get rewarded. And by the way, we have some political opinions as well, so listen to that.
As I say, like we don't have time to get into it, but my interpretation of the Bible, Jesus questioned authority again and again and again. And when it was on the wrong side of what was right and wrong, he called it out. And I think people that just follow it because it's tradition and because it's nice and because they like authority and they're scared that the kids are rocking the boat, I don't think they've read the Bible. That's exactly. Not about religion anymore. That's just about preserving tradition and law and order.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, it's one thing when you are a young person that just doesn't want conflict. You don't want to, you want to have this Christmas dinner with your grandparents and you just don't want to get involved in this. But at the moment that they start, going against you, saying that forcing you to make some kind of decisions because of their moral code that you find wrong, you start getting rebellious about this.
So you've described a situation where you get led into populist tyranny and the end of democracy. Do you see any hope?
Honestly, no. But this is something that is really hard for me to admit, but I don't think that anything will change here. I'm not happy with that, of course, but I actually think that people will simply get tired of fighting and they will drop it. Because as I said, first of all, it's just a matter of a serious impairment of freedom. So I believe that if nothing will change, if the government literally puts a foot down on their throat, I think they will get tired of fighting, because some people would just think that maybe it's better to just lay down, work on getting some money and just leave the country, right?
Well, what do you think about the argument that says, okay, people get disheartened when the protests don't have the effect they hope for? But the big problem with most democracies these days seems to be that young people don't vote at all, right? Do you think that, this will just, when the protests stop and the rage is suppressed, do you think it will transfer into the ballot box?
Well, first of all, with all of those novelties that the current government done to the Supreme Court, and how much power they gave to themselves, and how much propaganda is being spread, because the national TV, they are not even trying anymore. They are not even trying to make it sound like it's not propaganda. There are protests on the street. They are completely wrong. Please fight them, right? There's no arguments there. So I just don't believe that elections in Poland will really be 100% legally made, because we have this situation in Poland where you have teachers hating the government, you have miners hating the government, you have farmers hating the government, you have youth fighting the government, you have LGBT communities fighting the government, you have all those people speaking against the government, and even most of the Catholics, they are speaking against the government because they don't like their religion to be involved in political matters. You have all of those people being against the government, but still the government wins with a majority. So people already are kind of getting suspicious if the second elections of the current government were 100% legal. So I'm not saying they are not, but
and the classic question of our era: do you think social media creates these divisions and tensions, or do you think it's helping to make people aware of the problems and unify people around them?
That's a really hard question, because, well, Well, first of all, I think that social media is really helping people, as you said, get a bearing on the situation in Poland, right? Because it's you won't have to listen to the news, you won't have to listen to any journalist that is actually making some kind of statements. You can just see the videos, you can see people like giving first-hand statements of what they saw, right? So this is one of the things they are helping. I mean, I guess it's true. I mean, if you will see how many people are, for example, doing such a simple thing as setting their profile picture on Facebook to something that represents the current movement, the protests, right? This is a small act.
The red lightning thing.
Yeah, the red lightning. Yeah, you probably saw this on my profile picture.
I've seen it on a few. Yeah.
I'm reminding about that lightning because there's a cool story about that too. But the thing is, even such a small act, it can help some people because you can go on social media and you see how many people are actually supporting you, right? Because, me in Warsaw, in the capital of Poland, it's really easy for me. I can just look out my window and see the firecrackers going off, right? And see the protests. But then people living in smaller, in more secluded parts of Poland, they can open the internet and they can actually see that there is some support for their movements, that they're not alone, that the things that their teachers are saying at school, that their parents, their grandparents are saying, that this is not something that most people actually think.
That's almost optimistic enough to give me hope. Thank you.
Yeah, but actually, talking about this lightning that you mentioned, I actually told you that before the podcast. There was a sabotage of the national TV. It happened, I think, 2 days ago. They wanted to make a program about the fact that this lightning that they are using, that it's connected to Nazis, because the Nazis had this SS, right, symbol. It looked kind of similar, right? But then again, it's a lightning bolt. You also have the same symbol.
The Nazis used a lot of different imagery, right?
Exactly.
Hugo Boss is Nazi, like Coco Chanel is Nazi, Eagles are Nazis, the color black is Nazi.
Yeah, but then again, for people that are simple-minded, you can make this connection on TV, say, Nazis, and look, here's a picture of a Nazi uniform, and you see the lightning bolts, so this is clearly connected, right? So they wanted to make a program about it, and they started showing pictures of all those Nazi uniforms, saying that the symbol is connected, and at one point, the pictures stopped showing those Nazi uniforms and helmets and stuff like that. And they started showing, for example, that the symbols of Polish uprising, that there were some groups of fighters in Polish uprising that were also using the bolt, the thunderbolt. Yeah, right. And then they started showing pictures of, for example, the Polish post office, which also has a bolt in its in its logo, and some other pictures of completely unrelated stuff just to make it funny. And by the end, they showed the AC/DC logo with a bolt as well. And then
then the music, the God of Thunder,
yeah, and then the music video of Thunderstruck started playing in the national TV, and it played for as long as, I guess, they took the guy out in cuffs or something like that.
Oh, so this was someone hacked the feed and was actually superimposing images. Wow.
No, not hacking the feed. It was an inside job.
Oh, amazing.
He actually sabotaged that. So that was beautiful. That was really a V for Vendetta like moment. That was something that really gave me hope. That really gave me hope. If you wanted some positivity, so there you go.
And have you yourself been able to go to any of the protests, or like? Have you gone to any of the protests, or? So this is what I found with Black Lives Matter. I wanted to join, but there's a pandemic on, and I'm just trying to stay inside as much as I can.
Been to protests twice. Currently, I'm planning to go if the situation actually gets more serious. Then I will join again. If the situation will start dying down, then probably not. But then again, I'm here. Using my own name, educating you and all the 4 people listening to this podcast about the situation in Poland. So you can also say that it's that it's also some kind of small input, right?
Well, what I find often happens, and I'm going to be talking to someone from Bangkok and Hong Kong next week. But what you get is it starts off and then there's an act of violence, a brutal crackdown, and then the number's 10x because people watch that and they go, yeah, no, fuck these guys, right? And there's a lot of people right now hanging out. You know, they're not. We know the people that are professional protesters, right? They were ready to protest before the protest even started. But what often happens is that, there will be a harsh government crackdown, and it will act as a lightning rod, and normally things escalate quickly from there.
I mean, I'm not really sure what would need to happen at this point. I mean, as you said, probably a body would need to drop. The thing is, what is interesting, the police is actually mostly supportive in this case, right? They are not aggressive. I mean, there are some situations, of course, because there's a lot of chaos on the streets. There are videos of police pacifying someone, but in the end, it kind of looks like police doesn't want to get involved in either side, right? And I strongly believe that there are a lot of people supporting the protests among the police force. So I don't think that the government has power that strong to actually tell them, okay, go on and start killing those people because we got tired of them, right? Yeah. I don't think that it may go that far. And as far as people organizing, well, I really don't want, okay, let me not actually take a stance on this because I just don't want to even admit to thinking that maybe this is the most that we can do, that maybe this is all that we could have done, that maybe this is the strongest that we could have formed, and there are just no more people to join, maybe a couple. But
having spoken to a couple of very interesting, well-informed and well-experienced political activists in the US over the weekend, their main advice was get involved in politics. Definitely vote. Not enough people vote, but politics is so much more than putting a piece of paper in a box every 4 years. Get involved in local politics, and as you say, like, keep having conversations, right? Like, keep being reasonable, keep talking to people, even if they have differing opinions to you. Well, there is hope, I do believe.
Well, there is hope, but as I mentioned, that's a really sad fact to actually admit. But I just know that there are a lot of people that would rather just, lay low, get some money, just don't get involved, don't get killed, and just move out, right? So this is and then again, the actual revolution eats its children. We all know what happened in Donbass. So there are a lot of those young people now being super revolutionary, like, yeah, let's go, let's fight, but that can also not end very well.
Yeah, well, that's why I think it needs more people involved, right? Like, it takes a broad church to use a terrible metaphor.
Exactly.
Gabriel, thank you so much for that. That was a wonderful insight into something that I don't think I would have known about otherwise. Is there any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to promote? Is there any angry political hip hop we can have fading out the end of this episode?
Oh yes, definitely. There will be a revolutionary song against law and order. I have one ready.
Good
Don't
man.
worry. Don't worry.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time. I do really appreciate it. And if you have anything you want to plug or promote, we'll do links in the show notes.
Okay, thank you so much. It was great speaking with you.
Yeah, and good luck with everything, man. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Jak ja się wami, cór, wybrzydzę, jak bardzo, cór, wybrzydzę was. Więc zaśpiewajcie też, pisowców trzeba ebać i córewnic się nie bać i w mordę lat. Więc zaśpiewajcie też, pisowców trzeba ebać i córewnic się nie bać i w mordę lat. Pisowiec turwa nad curwami, to taka jest pisowska bra. Pisowiec kradnie milionami, by Rydzykowi szmalec dać. Pisowców trzeba ebać i córewnic się nie bać i w mordę lat. więc zaśpiewajcie też. Pisowców trzeba ebać i cudownic się nie bać i w mordę nam.